So my brother was home for Christmas and we naturally used that occasion to play Sea of Thieves. It's not a game I think I've ever talked about here on the channel, and I guess it's not really my usual bag of things, but it's a game I love. Not just because it's good, but because it's so accessible and approachable. You can get a 3-month Game Pass trial for next to nothing, and it's crossplay between PC and Xbox. So if you're part of the graphics mafia, you can play with your console peasant friends and, well, vice versa. I initially played the game in a secret alpha stress test, and let me tell you, I did not like it. At least not to the point that I bothered to play it when it released. And from what I hear, I didn't miss much, but there was something about the game. Sea of Thieves does something. There is that connection with the game world that you don't feel with, I don't know, other games in general. It's because every action is done manually. You adjust the sails manually, you load your gun manually, and so on and so on. That part was good, but it just didn't have any content. But it does now, and now it's great. But from the few people that I have invited to play it with me, I usually get this response. Yeah, it looks cool but very complicated, and it is, but it also isn't, so let me show you how to. Let me take you on a little how to play Sea of Thieves thing. Let's go. So when you're starting a game and you're the one making the crew, you get to pick between 3 ships. If you're just starting out, I suggest the tiny and nimble sloop, because it can be manned by just a single person fairly efficiently and is perfect for 2 to 4 people. And then we're in the game. Being pirates, we of course wake up from a bender at the local tavern, and here our journey begins. We're in a very big open world full of islands and adventures. On this island and other settlements like it, there are factions, and factions give you, well, direction both directly but also indirectly. Presently there are 7 factions in the game, and you don't exactly need to swear fealty to a specific one. Some of them are enemies, but as of present I'm on the 16th reputation level with one faction that is directly opposing a faction that I'm level 8 with. And I haven't felt any negativity from either or experienced any reputation penalties, so it's not important, but you know, don't quote me on that. Anyways, these factions offer voyages that you can take, and voyages are like quests. You take them and then you do them. But what is different from quests in a normal game is that you need to bring back the loot you acquire on the quest to actually complete it thoroughly and truly. And that's where the challenge is. Because you need to get the loot that you find safely back to an outpost that will accept it, and then and only then do you get reputation with your faction, and can advance through its ranks and gain access to voyages that will guide you to more prestigious loot that will grant you more faction XP. The factions also sell merch, and the merch does different things. I haven't unlocked all of it, but I know the flag increases faction reputation when you hand in loot, and I believe the faction sales makes it so that if you use a faction sail and sink a ship that your faction is enemy with, then you get more faction reputation points. And then there is the vanity stuff like a lantern that shines blue instead of yellow and a faction outfit. Yeah, equipment doesn't matter, at least not in the traditional sense that I'm used to in an MMO with armor points and differences in DPS and all that. But I'm gonna get more into that when we actually encounter some enemies. First we need to get off this island and do the quest that we have. And how do we do that? Well, we get on our ship, which is docked right here, and then we click X and then we set off, right? Well, not exactly. Just grabbing the wheel of the ship and pulling does nothing. We need to pull the anchor up so that the ship can actually move, and then we need to set the sail using the rope here, and then we need to change the sail's direction so that we can get the most out of the wind that is present in our sail and the most speed. This will need to be adjusted periodically on our journey to account for the ship turning and the wind changing. But before we can cast off, we need to know where to cast off to. we need to decide on a quest, because normally this is a co-op game and things are done here democratically. Quests are picked up from faction leaders but can also be found in the world, and they will appear in your quest log to begin with. And then down below here we can propose a quest and vote for a voyage. And once we have agreed on a voyage, we're given a set of island maps with locations of buried treasure marked on the map. Then over here on the sea map we look for the islands that we have maps to, and then we mark them on the sea map. It's a bit of a daunting task in the beginning of your pirate career, but the more you sail, the more you get to know these islands, and at presently I'm around 10 hours into the game and I can recognize at least a handful just by the outline, and I know roughly where they are in the world. Anyways, we mark them like this, and then we note the direction we need to go in, and then we run up to the wheels and then turn in the direction of where we are supposed to go. If you're an idiot, you'll keep running downstairs like I did for much of my first hours with the game to constantly check if I was going in the right direction. But when you're on the sloop, you can actually see the map table from the top deck if you look down below. And it makes it a lot less try to navigate solo, and if you're traveling with a companion, it will free them up to do other stuff on the ship, like mend the ship or fire the cannons, or heck, even keep an eye out for more loot. Because the thing is, you're not limited to just the loot the voyages point to. It's an open world and you can do whatever you want. You can sail to whatever island or atoll you see on the horizon, and you can muck about on it and look for treasure. And if you find treasure, that treasure just gives you just as much faction reputation as the treasure the voyages point to. And you can even pick up quests on the islands by finding messages in battle, which are actually incomplete voyages that other players were on but failed because their ship sank. And it's the same with the loot and the barrels floating around in the ocean. That's all from ships that have sank. The really cool thing that I found is that sometimes if they ran aground on a shoal or a coast, the wreck will still be there, and you can dive into the hull and find what they left behind and dodge sharks and a drowning death on the way there. It's really cool, man. After weathering a storm, which by the way, they aren't actually dangerous, they just look dangerous. They blow you a bit off course and they can fill your hull with water because water will splash in over the deck. But other than that, no big issue. Just keep sailing in one direction and avoid getting run aground. After that, we arrive at our first destination and jump off the ship and start looking for treasure. I love this bit of the game a lot because it reminds me of pirate cartoons and films that I saw when I was a little wee one. Like in those, you have to look at the palm trees on the eastern side of the island and walk 7 paces south from it and dig up the treasure. However, what is not like the cartoons from when I was a wee one are the skeletons that digging up treasure can disturb. And now we can talk gear. Sea of Thieves is a persistent open world MMO, but its gear and equipment system is functionally more like a hero shooter. None of the gear you're gonna find in the game is gonna be truly better than what you're already wearing. It's mostly about what you prefer. The only items that I have come across that are better than the base ones is a lantern that shines a blue light that is less visible from afar and makes you a bit harder to spot, and a looking glass that doesn't produce a glare when held up against the sun, and like the lantern makes you a bit harder to spot by the enemy, but that's about it. All of the clothing I've seen so far has been purely cosmetic, and all of the different weapons in the game are in a chest on your ship. I prefer a combination of a cutlass and a sniper rifle. I really dig sniper rifle, and the cutlass is for that's just for backup in case I run out of ammo for the sniper. I'm actually quite terrible at sword combat. There is this rudimentary dueling system present. You can block, hit normally, and you can do a charge up riposts that can't be blocked. And it's very simple, but it works, and it makes for sometimes really intense fighting. But I'm terrible at it, and I prefer to take out the skeleton enemies from the ship with a sniper. And if I'm up against players, I'll throw a firebomb or blast their asses with a blunderbuss. Right, where were we? We dug up some treasure and now we gotta go take it back. Most treasure can just be taken back to any outpost and then be traded, but as you progress through the game you will come across bits and pieces that need to be turned in at special islands, like these presents here. You're supposed to dig these up and then have them stolen from you by other players or steal them from other players yourself and then bring them in, and that will give you more faction reputation. But there is a secret little cheeky faction that you can actually turn them into that is only located one place on the map, and that is the Reaper's hideout right over here. And with that done, we've successfully completed our first voyage in Sea of Thieves. This might seem kinda boring at a glance, but it absolutely isn't. During my 10-hour pirate career, I've laughed more than I have at any other game in a really long time. Like, my brother and I had somehow ended up sailing in a higher ranked area, and that meant that we had gone up against a lot of players that were a lot more skilled than us, and we had gotten our asses kicked every single time. So after making our way back to the lesser ranked area, we came across a ship that looked to be at the same skill level as ours, and we started shooting, and they returned fire as well. During the battle we smashed into them and they took the opportunity to board us. I retreated into the hull of the ship and prepared to make my last stand, but then nothing happened. Normally a firebomb would have been thrown on the top deck and the enemy crew would have bailed as our ship caught fire and started breaking apart. But they didn't. They just kind of stuck around on the top deck, and then I realized that when we rammed them, they didn't board us because they wanted to kill us. They boarded us because their ship had sunk. So I fought my way to the top, my brother grabbed a firebomb, and then we cornered them in the map room and set them on fire, thinking that they would make a run for the water barrel in the hull. And we were right. They ran for the water barrel downstairs, and while their backs were turned, we ganked them. And then we turned the ship around and made it back to where they boarded us, and sure enough their loot was floating there, and we grabbed it and sold it off at a local outpost. Another time we were just heading to a destination and we saw a mass poking out of the water, and since we didn't know what it was, we decided to investigate, and it was a sunken ship and we started looting it. During the dive my brother was having trouble navigating the innards of the sunken ship and getting out in time, so he opted to just stay back on the ship and do some maintenance while I continued the dive. And thank fuck that he was bad at diving, because while I was diving a shark appeared and I was forced to hide out on the only part of the ship that was sticking out of the water, and I barely made it there. I had also forgotten to reload my guns, so I had to rely on my brother back on the ship to snipe the fucking shark so I could get back into the water safely when it was dead. And speaking of sniping, there are these explosives in the game, and some of the enemies, they will carry the explosives. And while I was doing maintenance on the ship, my brother was on the island, and I saved his butt with this shot when he didn't have any ammo and an explosive barrel enemy was gaining pace on him. But explosives can definitely also be a double-edged sword. I think our worst defeat ever was going to an island and finding 10 awesome chests full of loot and several high reward skulls. But on our way back our ship sunk and we had no idea why. We decided that he should stay back with the floating loot and, well, 5 shots in his blunderbuss and just hope that no sharks came. And then I would use the mermaid teleport back to the nearest outpost where our ship had respawned, and then I would make my way back to his location. And I did, and then I sailed straight into 3 explosive barrels that we had also found on the island, and the ship sunk. Again, loot unfortunately only sticks around for so long, so by the time that I had gotten back to the ship again, it was despawned and we were just defeated, so defeated. But I think it speaks to the strength of the game that we got right back at it and played more of the game and learned from the experience and got better at going back to outposts more often, and this and many other shipwrecks really prepared us well for ship battles with other players, and I attribute the player versus player victory from earlier to our reparation skills. And we also got better at not leaving food on the stove, which sunk our ship at least 3 times. Well, I think that's about it for a quick tutorial on how to sail the Sea of Thieves. I mentioned a few things briefly in my stories earlier, and I guess I should elaborate. Mermaids, if you fall off the ship or your ship sinks and you're in the water, a mermaid will appear and you can talk to them and they will teleport you back on the ship if it's still there, or it will teleport you to where it's being respawned. Ammunition. You can only carry 5 shots with you at a time, and you can reload at an ammunition crate on your ship, as well as pick up ammunition crates from islands, and they can serve sort of as finite portable ammo crates. Money. Each piece of loot you return to an outpost is then sold for money. The amount depends on the rarity of the item or the toughness of the enemy. And enemies, I guess. There are a bunch of different ones. The most common are the skelly boys, and in the beginning you'll mostly see sword skellies and scratchy skellies and the captain skellies. The captain skellies are the ones that drop their skull, and those can be sold. The further you sail into the Sea of Thieves, the tougher the skellies will be, and the more types will appear, like the explosive barrel skellies I mentioned earlier, but also blunderbuss skellies and sniper skellies. There are sea monsters that sometimes appear, but I don't know how to fight them, and there are ghost ships as well, and those are a bit of a challenge. Especially the one guarding the world boss, and I suggest not bothering with those, as we tried to battle them a couple of times and we managed to make no dent in them whatsoever. There are other players that sail the Sea of Thieves like you, and you can battle them or ignore them or heck well, even cooperate with them and invite them to join your crew. It's pretty easy to avoid combat if you wish, and the map is divided into a few zones and will dump player into the appropriate zone depending on their experience with the game. And it seems like the starting areas are also way less populated and more peaceful than the higher ranked areas. Yeah, and I think that's it. I think you're now ready to sail on the Sea of Thieves. If you're looking for players, you can join my Discord. I'm setting up a Sea of Thieves game night and I hope to make it a regular thing. I hope you like this little tutorial, and I hope it inspires you to play the game. And I really hope to see you on the Sea of Thieves, whether that's as an ally or, well, even an enemy. But until then, bye bye.